Weathering with You, written and directed by Makoto Shinkai, his latest film is in many ways very similar to the previous works, such as Your Name and Garden of Words. Its central themes revolve around young love, naive and pure and doomed. It takes place in a modern world with elements of fantasy included in the plot, and it also has a very similar animation style, heavily featuring beautifully drawn weather. The story this time around starts with Hodaka, a teenage boy who ran away from home for reasons unknown to us. He arrives in Tokyo, he's a minor, he doesn't really have a lot of money or a plan what to do, but fortunately, after a couple of nights, he gets a helping hand from another man he met on the ferry. He gets a place to stay, a part time job as a writer for this little magazine covering various supernatural and magical theories, and he also befriends the two people he stays with. One day he meets another girl who, as it turns out, has magical powers. She is able to change weather through her prayer and her force of will, albeit only in a small place at a time. But that proves to be quite useful as a gift anyway, because Tokyo is experiencing the worst series of rains in recent history. So the two kids basically put up an advert where they offer these services of the weather girl for a small price, and then they start doing that, and then they quickly become closer and closer. However, the magic power has a price which will eventually disrupt this everyday happiness. So, I'll start with the animation style. As usual for Makoto Shinkai, it has a very specific style, very clear, modern, sleek looking. It focuses heavily on animating weather, in particular rain and sun rays, and it is gorgeous. I think it's safe to say that his movies in general are among the best looking anime movies currently being made, and this one is no exception. It's just a pleasure to look at all the way through. The second thing, which I already mentioned, is also familiar for fans of the director, and these are the essential themes. Teenage love with this atmosphere of kind of impending doom, of the fleeting happiness that cannot last for one reason or another, and this immediate nostalgia for those feelings, even as they're still present. And I have to say, as competent as the film is about exploring those themes, it does begin to feel a little repetitive and derivative of previous works of Shinkai. I mean, even about the other movies up until this one, you could make an argument that they were kind of similar to one another and maybe exploring the same things. But I think it was maybe mitigated a little bit by the fact that they were still getting better one by one. Culminating with Your Name, which was a masterpiece in my book. And compared to that high point, Weathering with You just doesn't feel as special or as refined. And really, that goes both for the romance layer and for the fantasy elements that are included. See, in Your Name, those two layers were very seamlessly and elegantly connected, and they worked together to weave the narrative. And I felt that Weathering with You is a little more clunky in marrying those threads. The fantastical elements just don't feel as strong or engaging, and the emotional climax didn't really grip me as much. I felt it somehow, less mature, maybe less polished several times, also using pop songs blaring in the background of scenes as kind of as a crutch, which is something that Shinkai has also done in the past, but here it's even more present and visible. So, as beautiful as it is, visually speaking, I thought that story-wise, on the emotional level, it just doesn't reach the same heights that Makoto Shinkai has reached in the past. But here's an interesting caveat. I think that if you haven't seen his previous works, you will enjoy this movie more than I have, because it's not inherently bad. I mean, it's not bad at all. It's a fine movie on its own, but it pales in comparison. So I think a lot of your reception will depend on whether you have that point of reference, you have that comparison. If yes, then I think you will find it underwhelming just as much as I did. If not, perhaps you'll appreciate it more.